So, welcome to the brand new series, Finding Meaning in the Meaningless, from what has become one of my favorite books in the Bible, Ecclesiastes. It's an interesting book, a unique book, and I can't wait to dig in with you. So, it's gonna be fun. How long the series will go, I don't know, until I get sick and tired of it or until I run out of content, but it's full of good stuff, okay? So, this summer, I talked about it a few weeks ago, but one of the biggest, if not the biggest movie that had come out this summer, besides Spider-Man, everyone loves Spider-Man, is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Great movie, I saw it. It's truly amazing and groundbreaking. If you haven't seen it, it's quickly become a top 5 movie for me personally. But if you didn't know, the story itself, though, has been around for about 3,000 years. It's an old story. It was originally written by a Greek poet named Homer. And he wrote it as a poem to be performed by storytellers called bards. And they memorized this poem. It's 121,000 words. And they memorized this poem and recited it using like repetition, other memory techniques and things like that. And a full bard performance, because back then you didn't have anything else better to do, okay? But a full bard performance of the Odyssey took about 20 hours to perform, 20 hours. And it was all memorized. Think about that, all memorized. And you guys can't even memorize a few Bible verses. It's 121,000 words, unbelievable. But the Odyssey is a story of a soldier named Odysseus and his long journey home after the Trojan War. And on the way home, he faces countless obstacles and things blocking his path. And it's kind of a story about, things blocking his way back home to keep him from becoming the man he's meant to be. That's what the story is all about. And one of these obstacles that Odysseus faces is called the lotus. The lotus. If you've seen the movie, the lotus flower is what Calypso gives to Odysseus while he's stuck on her island. And the lotus, it dulls pain. It clouds memories, and it slowly causes Odysseus to kind of just forget who he is and what his purpose is. But in the original poem, it's a little different. The lotus part is actually a group of people. So Odysseus and his crew, they sail to this island and they find the lotus eaters. And the lotus eaters, they're just a group of people that stay on an island eating the lotus all day. That's all they do. And the lotus eaters, they're known for just falling into this blissful state of numbness. Their senses and emotions, they're all dulled, and they slowly become disconnected from the realities of life because of the lotus flower. Now in 2026, we have another type of flower who laughed? That does the same kind of thing. Everyone's quiet, okay, it was a joke, it was funny. But in the story, when Odysseus sends his man, you don't know what it is? The devil's lettuce? Okay, that's what it is. But in the story, when Odysseus sends his men to explore the island, they eat the lotus and they immediately want to just stay on the island and continue in this blissful state of numbness that disconnects them from reality. And the Odyssey is such a timeless story because it speaks so directly and relevantly to the human condition and the struggles that we all have, the temptations we all face. We all face that. I mean, think about it, right? Human beings, you, me, we have been lured into the lotus flower for thousands of years. We are looking for anything that will help us escape the discomfort of being human. We try to dull our emotions and our pain and our honesty, and we would rather just forget about it and continue in this blissful state. So we binge another show. We scroll endlessly through social media. We pour another drink. We throw ourselves into our work. We chase another relationship. We buy another thing. We plan another vacation. We distract ourselves with endless entertainment, all to just dull the senses. We numb our struggles instead of facing them head on. We escape reality instead of living in it. We suppress our emotions rather than actually dealing with them and asking, why do I feel this way? And when we do, we are like the lotus eaters who strand ourselves on this island, opting for blissful numbness over reality itself. And when we do that, we lose sight of who we are and what we're called to do, where we're headed. There was a German novelist, his name's Franz Kafka, and he once said this, listen to this is amazing. Reality is too heavy for most people to carry, so they borrow illusions, soft dreams, sweet lies, and call it happiness. Reality is too heavy for most people to carry, so they borrow illusions, soft dreams, sweet lies, and call it happiness. We so easily become lotus eaters. We reach for anything that numbs us to the uncomfortable realities of our lives and how we feel. And in doing so, church, we lose ourselves. That's why in the original poem, Odysseus, he recognizes the danger of the lotus and forcibly drags those who went to the island back on his ship. He actually ties them to the mast of the ship and ties them to their benches and orders the crew to sail away from it, because he knew the dangers of just living in this blissful numbness forever. And that is exactly what Ecclesiastes is meant to do for us. Ecclesiastes drags us away from the lotus flowers of life, forcibly a lot of times. And it forces us to face reality and deal with life's hardest and deepest questions. Why am I here? What am I living for? Why do I keep chasing and yet I'm never satisfied when I get it? Is this all that there is? It forces us to ask these questions and search for answers. So go ahead and turn your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. This is part 1 of our series, Finding Meaning in the Meaningless. And the message for today is called, Is This All There Is? So Ecclesiastes 1:1, it starts with this: the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. So let's start with some context before we get into this. So the word preacher is translated from the Hebrew word kohelet. Say it with me, kohelet. Now you are a Hebrew scholar. Congratulations. Post it on social media and tag me that you learned something in church today. Kohelet means the one who gathers material for the education of the public. That's what it means. So the next question is, who exactly is this preacher who's doing this? Well, the opening verse seems to indicate that the preacher and the writer of Ecclesiastes is King David's son, Solomon. And some still hold that view. But many scholars today tend to say that Ecclesiastes was not written by Solomon, and I actually tend to agree with that. I don't want to get too into the weeds of why, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We're still going to interpret the same way, okay? But I want to show you one quick indication why it probably wasn't Solomon who wrote it. Ecclesiastes 1:12 says, I, the preacher, have been, what was it? Have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. You know the history of Solomon, there was never a point in his life where he wasn't the king in Jerusalem. He died as the king in Jerusalem. So that's just one little point. And also, if you look at the Hebrew phrasing and language, it indicates a later writing of Ecclesiastes, long after Solomon had died. Just like we kind of talk differently today than people did, 100, 200, 300 years ago. There's some indications in there that point to a later writing. 3rd century BC, which would actually make it one of the later, if not the latest book in the Old Testament that was written. You may ask, okay, well, why does this matter? Well, if you understand what God's people were going through during that time, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. The tone and the subject matter even more jump off the page. Because during that time in Hebrew history, it would have seemed to many that God's promises were done. They had come to nothing. They were given all of these promises, and now they were living in silence, in exile. The kingdom of Israel had long fallen years and years ago, and the Israelites were living under one foreign kingdom after another. The Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, and eventually the Romans. So the point is, life wasn't unfolding the way that they expected. They struggled. I mean, right? When life doesn't go the way that you thought it was going to go, you too struggle to find meaning in the meaningless. That's what they were all struggling with. And that's why a main theme throughout the book of Ecclesiastes is hebel. Hebel, it's a Hebrew word, hebel, that means vanity and breath and striving after the wind. Hebel essentially is the struggle to find meaning in life under the sun. In other words, finding meaning under the sun, if this is all that there is, finding meaning in this world is like striving after the wind. You try and find it, and you strive to find it, but you can never quite get it. So I think that the writer of Ecclesiastes, who is unknown, he adopts this name, Kohelet, or the preacher, but he takes on the persona of King Solomon to write it and to explore life under the sun. If you know something about Solomon, you know that he was the wisest, the richest man to ever live. So Kohelet takes on his persona. In other words, he writes as if he is Solomon to show that if Solomon, who had everything that the world has to offer, and if Solomon couldn't find meaning and fulfillment in life under the sun, then who possibly could find it? And that's the essence of Ecclesiastes. So let's continue verse 2. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. In other words, meaningless of meaninglessness. That's what he's saying. All is vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea's not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the eye filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss poem there for a second. Is there a thing of which is said, see, this is new? It is already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. The end. Ouch. Thank you for coming today to feel so encouraged. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit more context at you today, but it's important. More important to know. You can be educated people, okay? So the first 11 verses of Ecclesiastes, what I just read, it's actually a short prologue, okay, in which a third-party narrator gives a summary of what Kohelet is about to say. So you can kind of bracket the first 11 verses in your Bible. And then what follows is an actual monologue written by the Kohelet or the preacher, remember, he's taking on the persona of Solomon, and he's exploring life under the sun. And lastly, we'll get here eventually, but the last few verses of Ecclesiastes are an epilogue in which the narrator returns to interpret what the Kohelet has just spent all these chapters saying. So what we just read, verses 1 to 11, this is really just the summary of what we're about to read. This is the whole essence of Ecclesiastes. Here it is. Ready? I'll summarize it for you. Write it down. Life is full of trouble, then you die and you're forgotten. That's it. I just summarized the whole book for you. You should still read it, but that's the essence of the whole thing, guys. Life is full of trouble, then you die, and you're eventually completely forgotten. Yeehaw. The Message version puts it this way in verse 11. Listen to this. Nobody remembers what happened yesterday, and the things that will happen tomorrow, nobody will remember them either. Don't count on being remembered. The end. Now, this seems so off almost. Like you read other books of the Bible, you're like, what is going on here? Well, you have to remember as you read through Ecclesiastes that Kohelet's search for meaning, it depends entirely on his own observations and experiences under the sun. That's it. He is writing this from the perspective of if this is all that there is. He is searching for meaning in only the world, in only a world where the world is all that there is. You'll read Ecclesiastes and you'll hear mention of God, but if you notice what he's really writing about in context, God is never really referred to in a personal sense. We here believe that God is a personal God who we can know, who we talk to, who lives within us. But as you probably know from talking maybe to other people in your life, a lot of people just refer to God as just God up in the sky. There's no real personal relationship. It's just God up there. And that's really what the writer of Ecclesiastes is referring to when he talks about God. Because remember, life under the sun, there's no real personal God. It's just God up in the sky kind of stuff. And so to be honest, you're going to read through Ecclesiastes, maybe you have already. One of the first questions that you should probably ask yourself is, why in the world is this book in the Bible? I mean, people have asked it, what's it doing in here? This is kind of counter to what maybe some other passages say. Well, one commentator answered that question, and he said, Ecclesiastes is a kind of back door that allows believers to have the sad and skeptical thoughts that they would never allow to enter the front door of their faith. In other words, we all have the same struggles and thoughts as this writer in Ecclesiastes does. Now, we know the answer. We've come to find meaning elsewhere. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all still struggle with the same kinds of things, don't we? In other words, believing in God, it doesn't eliminate the hebel of life, the frustrating, the perplexing side of life. In Ecclesiastes, it gives us permission to wrestle with it, to be real and honest about life under the sun. Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick, he called Ecclesiastes the truest of all books. Isn't that interesting? So Ecclesiastes is our permission to be human, to not settle for simple Sunday school answers. Aren't you frustrated? People are like, oh, it'll be better. Oh, it'll feel better. No, it won't. Stop with that. Like, man, I'm really struggling here. It gives you permission to not settle for that candy stuff, to delve deeper, to really ask, what is going on here? It doesn't paint an overly pessimistic or overly optimistic view of life. It just paints a view of life as it really is and how it really feels. One of the interesting things is that Ecclesiastes is in the Old Testament, and it's never directly referenced in the New Testament. But there is one passage in the New Testament that kind of reflects the same kind of idea of Ecclesiastes. It comes from Romans 8. Let me read it to you. Romans 8:18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility. Look. Not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation, that includes us, has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoptions as sons, the redemption of our bodies. Did you see that? We are groaning inwardly. Don't you feel it? Like, don't you feel that this is just not where I'm supposed to be? There's a groaning in all of us that points to something else than life under the sun. And even, Paul's writing this in Romans, and he's talking about the hope of redemption. And I hope you have that today. But I know you still have the groaning because it's not completed yet. We're still here on this life under the sun. St. Augustine famously wrote, you might have heard this quote before, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. And we can hear that quote and wrongly assume that it means the moment we find God, all of our restlessness just suddenly disappears. Like it's like a magic erase of all of our struggle and pain and frustration. But that's not real life at all, as you know. It's certainly not my experience. I have a feeling it's not yours either. Having the hope of redemption doesn't erase the groanings that we all feel and have, life under the sun. It doesn't erase the futility of life under the sun. I have the hope of redemption, but I still struggle with many of the same things that Kohelet in Ecclesiastes writes about and struggles with himself. So I still ask, what's this all for? What's this all for? The internet shut down at 10 a.m. and I said, what's this all for? What's this all for? I still look for satisfaction in all the wrong places. I'm a really happy kind of person. I'm a pastor. I found meaning, but there's still areas of my life where I go and try to find satisfaction in other places. I still feel the ache of living in an unfair and unjust world. It's one of the things we'll get to the author of Ecclesiastes writes about. He looks at the world and there's just so much injustice. There's bad people getting good things and good people getting bad things. And he's looking at this and saying, what is this about? This isn't fair. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. Augustine is pointing to God as our ultimate source of rest. Yes, of course. But that doesn't mean that we'll never experience restlessness again. We all face it. Though God does give us rest, we're still learning to apply that rest in deeper and deeper and deeper areas of our life. There is still something about you that is restless. And that's why Ecclesiastes is such a gift. It's truly a gift. it shines a spotlight on our restlessness. It says, you know why you're feeling that way? I felt it too. And it goes on to expand about this. And it invites us in to be honest about our groanings and our restlessness. And why do I feel this way? And why is life going this way? It invites us in to be real and honest about it. Honest about why are we so restless about certain things? Why? We're going to talk about that next week. Next week might be a top 5 message that I've ever done. I wanted to preach it this week, but I was disciplined to wait a minute and give you some context and a preview. Next week, though, if you have plans, cancel them. You got to be here. Anyway, come here, you'll be depressed. You got to be honest. I mean, we have to be honest about there are things in this world that we know won't satisfy us, but we keep pursuing them anyway. Why? It gives us permission to be honest about our struggles and our frustrations and the questions that we ask in our head that we don't ask with our mouths, but they're still there. It gives us permission to do all of that because listen, church, until you're honest about your own restlessness, you won't be able to apply the rest that God offers to it. Amen. The first step is honesty. It's admission. You've got to admit to yourself why you're feeling a certain way, why you're struggling in a certain way. Even just saying, man, I'm struggling here. I don't know why I'm thinking this. I don't know, even just doing that. If you don't do that, you will never be able to apply the rest that God gives to your heart. You have to be honest. And so this is gonna get real honest and real deep. But that's why if you got my email, seriously, when you go home, just don't put this away. Write some things down. Really do the work of being honest with your struggles and your frustrations, the things we talk about. Because if you don't, man, you're never going to apply that rest that God can give to you. Ecclesiastes, really, I like to think of it as an experiment. It really is. It's an experiment. It's this guy who wrote it, Kohelet, the preacher, personified Solomon, whatever. It's this guy trying to find everything possible under the sun to satisfy his restless heart. He tries pleasures, he tries wisdom, he tries success, wealth, work, relationships. He tries it all. He chases them all the way, full throttle. He holds nothing back. And in doing so, in every conclusion that he makes, he reveals so clearly to us, there is nothing, zero, nothing under the sun capable of giving us the rest that we long for. And here's what's gonna be a hard thing for you to understand and me to wrestle with too. Even the good things. There are some really good things that we experience in life under the sun. But I hate to break it to you, they're all fading away. They're all going away. Even the best day of your life, that's what it was. It was just history. Just history now. That's all it is. The good, the bad, it's all fading away, and there is nothing in this life that will satisfy you. Nothing. Ecclesiastes is meant to really level you down. It leaves you desperate and almost pleading to say, is this really all that there is? Is this really all that there is? One of my pastor friends, he's kind of joking, but kind of not. When people come and ask him, I'm kind of new to this. What book of the Bible should I read first? He actually tells them a lot of times Ecclesiastes. And it seems, why would you don't get the hope until you get the desperation? Really, the rest of the Bible is the reason. It's if you're not wrestling with, is this all that there is? When there's presented that there is something else, you're not really gonna grasp it until you're desperate and have tried everything and know that there's nothing under the sun that's gonna satisfy you. Until you've exhausted every promise of satisfaction under the sun, you'll never be desperate enough to look above it. Verse 12 says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I've seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after the wind. Vanity here, like I said, is translated from the Hebrew word hebel, which is the central word in Ecclesiastes, hebel. And while hebel is often translated into vanity or meaninglessness, it literally means vapor or breath. It's like waking up on a cold morning and breathing out, and you see your breath for a moment and it's there and gone almost immediately. That's the idea of hebel. It's used throughout the book of Ecclesiastes multiple times, but it first appears in the book of Genesis. I can't wait to blow your mind, man. It's gonna be good. Adam and Eve, first human beings ever created, ever lived, Adam and Eve. First, they have two sons. Their names are Cain and Abel. Do you know what Abel's name means? Hebel. Abel's just a different form of the word hebel. The very same Hebrew word used throughout Ecclesiastes is also the name of Adam and Eve's second son, whose life was tragically brief. You know the story? His brother Cain murdered him. So like a breath and a vapor, Abel was only here for a moment before he was gone. But hebel doesn't only refer to Abel's brief life on earth, it also refers to the way his life ended. You look at this story of Cain and Abel, and it's just senseless and unjust. It's meaningless. You look at this, it's like, why? Why did this have to happen? This good and righteous man, Abel, was murdered by his own brother, and that was it. Abel's story, his life, is a real picture of hebel, Ecclesiastes itself. It feels so senseless and unfair and difficult to understand. You read this story, and it should leave you asking yourself, why do the righteous suffer? Why does injustice seem to prevail? Why is life so fragile? You read the story, and you ask, is this really all that there is? But there's another story after the story of Abel. Look at Genesis 4:25. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. In Hebrew, Seth means established and appointed. So out of the hebel, out of the meaninglessness of that story, God established and appointed another. Abel's story wasn't the end of the story, just as Ecclesiastes isn't the end of the story. There is something greater that rises above the meaningless hebel of life. Church, there is something above the sun. Because Seth became the father of Enosh, Enosh of Kenan, Kenan of Mahalalel, and eventually, because I'm not reading all those names, eventually gave birth to Noah, gave birth to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and David, and finally, Jesus Christ himself, the established and appointed one. See, the story that seemingly ended in hebel with nothing ultimately led to another offspring not just Seth, but the offspring of the woman, Jesus Christ himself, a forever established and appointed and living hope. The story that began, unbelievable. The story that began with a man named Abel, who was named Hebel, was unjustly murdered, left everyone asking, is this all that there is? Many, many years later, there was another man, Jesus, who came, and he too was unjustly murdered on a cross in the Hebel of life, and left everyone standing there as he was dying, asking, is this all that there is? Is this where it ends? But Jesus answered that question for us once and for all. Though he lived and even died in the Hebel and the meaninglessness of this world and his life, his death gave way to something new. He wasn't left to die in the Hebel of the world, but he rose from it to new life. And now his resurrection, the resurrection of Jesus, that gives meaning to everything that once seemed meaningless. It's Jesus. He lives to show us for once and for all that there is something above the sun that is greater than any bad thing or any good thing that we could ever experience here on this world. He is greater. He lives. There is another world breaking into this one. This isn't all that there is. There is something more. And he lives to testify to that fact. Frederick Buechner, he beautifully wrote this: the worst isn't the last thing about the world. It's the next to the last thing. The last thing is the best. It's the power from on high that comes down into the world, that wells up from the rock bottom worst of the world like a hidden spring. There is something bubbling in the waters of this earth. There is something greater that rises above the sun, a new life breaking into this one. And if you know Jesus today, you know what that is. It's new life that rises above everything in this world. It's new, it's better, it's of another world. Paul writes that we are seated with him, not under the sun, but in the heavenly places with Christ Jesus. So as you read through Ecclesiastes, you've got to remember, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. Yeah, I still struggle. Yeah, I still have this restlessness. Yeah, I still am frustrated with how my life is going, but you've got to remember there is a greater hope, a living hope within you that is testifying to you every day. There is something else. There is something more. And it's only a matter of time before that something more becomes everything that we know. And all of this life under the sun, it's all fading away because it's making room for the new thing that Jesus has established and is doing and is working out right now at this very moment. There is something greater, something new. There is a life above the sun.